a.m. This meeting is now in order. If we can please rise with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To open comment.
Your call cannot be completed as dialed. Your call cannot be completed.
Got the 9 in front.
Welcome to AT&T's teleconference service. Please enter your access code, followed by the pound sign. To join the conference as the host, press star. Otherwise, press pound. Please enter your host password. There are 2 participants on the call, including you. You are joining your conference as the host. For a menu of available commands, press star pound.
Open comment?
Yes, Mr. Rooney?
He said he was going to wait till number 3.
Is there any other individuals?
He's good. We'll get to 3. What else have we got?
Okay, yes.
Okay, another.
Oh.
All right. We're going to move on to the rest of the agenda here. We're going to move on to item number 2. Approve the minutes of the October 19, 2018 Transportation Policy Board meeting.
Would move to approve.
I have a motion on the floor to approve. Is there a second? The motion has been seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Abstentions. Motion carries unanimously. Item number 2 has been approved. Move on to item number 3. Read that for the record.
Yes. Item number 3 is approve a resolution by the TPB expressing its support for the Borderland Expressway project, also known as Northeast Parkway, and is further supportive of efforts to secure funding.
Yes.
For the Texas Department of Transportation and any other potential funding sources that would assist in the development of such projects.
Good morning, Raymond Tejas. I'm the Executive Director of the Camino Real Regional Mobility Authority. 2 months ago in September at the last TPB board meeting, I gave a presentation in support of this request for a resolution in support of the Borderland Expressway project. The presentation did 2 things. One, briefly touched on the project itself, and then the second component of that PowerPoint got into the specifics of pass-through financing and how we, the RMA and the region, really came together and used pass-through financing to pay for the Interloop project. So that presentation was given 2 months ago. It's part of your backup. I'm happy to give it again. But as I recall from 2 months ago, this board, during the discussion of this item, asked the MPO to develop some traffic numbers. So at this point, I'll pass it over to Roger to walk you through the traffic numbers that have been developed to date.
Thank you, Roger Williams, Interim Executive Director of the El Paso MPO. So as Raymond was saying, we were tasked with looking at this project and developing an analysis based on what we see in the Destino 2045 MTP. So putting this project into a regional context, first of all, there's 2 elements to the Borderland Expressway. And first, what was known as the Northeast Parkway is about a 10-mile stretch here on the Texas side, and it starts at about Loop 375 and Railroad and extends to the New Mexico-Texas state line. The other element to that is on the New Mexico side with New Mexico 404, better known as the Anthony Gap, and New Mexico 213. So for a total of about 21 miles of roadway there. So in our entire planning area, there is about 67 miles in length of I-10. But for the purpose of our study, if you will, it is from the Loop 375 Americas to the northern border of our planning area. And there's 4 roadways that we're looking at here. And that is I-10, about a 38-mile stretch. The border highway consists of several elements, being America's portion, Cesar Chavez, going up to the border West Expressway and connecting at Sunland Park and I-10. The Trans Mountain portion used in conjunction with the Loop 375 and the I-10 portion up to our northern border, and then the bringing in the Borderland Expressway from the Loop 375 and up to the northern border. So in comparison, they're very similar in length. So in 2045, which is where we're really looking here, so this is out in the horizon of our plan, you could consider that the Borderland Expressway has the potential of being a bypass relief for through traffic when I-10 and the border highway reach capacity, and we'll be looking at that. So looking into the model, we see that there are quite a few trucks coming through our region, and about 2,000 plus trucks daily come through here, and that's external traffic. It's not generated within. And about 500 trucks from the ports of entry, and a little more than that actually. So what's important to understand about that is that this is external. This is traffic and it's trucks and it's passing through. Up there next to the Borderland Expressway, you can see that 1,200 trucks, according to our modeling, would take the Borderland Expressway. But you need to understand that there's a difference there in that number at the bottom that's external. This is internal and external, and it's trucks. So if I-10 were to shut down, again, the Borderland Expressway may be considered as an alternative bypass. But now we're going to take this to a little bit different scale. And that is that we're going to be looking at the AM peak. That's the busiest time. And we're going to take a look at a few things here that are of interest in that in 2045, in the AM peak, you can see that big number there, 47,200, is at about the I-10 and the Spaghetti Bowl, and the border highway coming in 21.6, and quite a few up on the Loop 375 and going through the Trans Mountain. And we converted the VC ratio into percentages, so it makes a little bit more sense. And in 2045, you can see on I-10, we're at 100% and we're at full capacity. And you see a lot of 90s around there too, especially at the Loop 375, right at about where the Borderland Expressway would be connecting and going across Trans Mountain. We also are taking a look at a few more things here that need to back up on that one. Sorry about that. That we're bringing in the US 54 element and Martin Luther King and railroads at 100% right there. So you can see that a lot of there's going to be a lot of problems by the time we get out to the year 2045. Now this is inclusive of all the things that we've already put into the plan for addressing what we need to do by the year 2045. Okay, this is based on all of the demographics in Destino 2045 and all of the projects. So now let's bring in the Borderland Expressway. And you can see there's an element there, which is the one that was known as the Northeast Parkway, will be taking the most of the vehicle traffic. We haven't got a difference there between truck and autos, but that it is about, it's greater than 2,400 vehicles. And then we start looking at, well, where are those coming from? And mainly, we can point out a few roadways here. Martin Luther King, McCombs, Dyer, Railroad. So a lot on the northeast side of town. A lot of those vehicles are moving over to the Borderland Expressway, and also going across Trans Mountain. And there is an impact on I-10 too, as well, on the west side, the northern part of our planning area there on I-10. And then we wanted to convert this into traffic flow. You can see the biggest part of that is on the Loop 375, the Woodrow Bean area, I guess. They're about 20%. We're removing traffic here in these roadways. And what we observed on I-10 and Border Highway in the central part of El Paso is not very significant. It's not pulling much of the traffic up and from down there. And then we bring back in the Borderland Expressway. And what we did is we brought in again a percentage there, so you can see that at this roadway here is considered a full, what we want to do as far as how it's planned in the Destino. There's two elements. There's the Super 2, and then there's the full-blown 4-lane roadway. This is the full-blown 4-lane roadway, and it's operating at about 45% of its capacity. Now, there has been some comparison here of the Trans Mountain and the Anthony Gap portion of the Borderland Expressway. And this is not scientific by any means, but I think visually you can see that it's a big difference. Another thing I'd say about the modeling is that our model is not sensitive to the grades on these roadways. It's simply pulling traffic because it sees an option for where it can go. It's not determining, oh, you're going to have a harder time going across this if you're a truck, and an easier time going across the other. It's just pulling traffic because that's what it does. It sees the options there. But if you look at it, you can see that if there was a choice to go through either the Borderland Expressway or the Trans Mountain, it would probably be a lot easier to get over the 404 section than it would be over Trans Mountain. There's your elevation. That's down at the roadway level. It also, you can consider that it's probably safer for vehicles that might back up behind trucks if they're going over Trans Mountain versus a Borderland Expressway. And to go ahead and wrap this up, what we were tasked with was looking at how this project performs. And what we've got here is a typical weekday. It does not take into consideration things like accidents, incidents, lane closures, reconstruction, or shutting down I-10. So if the I-10 were to shut down, the Borderland Expressway becomes an alternative bypass relief. That probably would be the case, and some of the things that have happened here in the past that we've seen where that might be another good option. So with that said, I can open it up for any questions you might have.
Just a quick more comment. You didn't look at it when we're doing construction on I-10.
That's right.
And you're looking at 2045, and just a gut feel, half to two-thirds of the years between now and 2045, I-10 will be under construction. And what that means is that all of those trucks have to find another way through. And one of the things that we're experiencing, and we find in the Reimagine I-10 study, is that the percentage of trucks in the non-peak hours are running up to 60% of the total traffic on I-10 because the industry has observed that we don't have additional capacity available during the peak hours. So I suspect that those numbers are very, very low compared to what they will be in reality because of the reality of I-10.
Well, my comment is on the same, pretty much on the same topic. From what you showed, from the graphic that you showed, most of the benefit for this is going to be out of northeast El Paso, which will pull some traffic off of the rest of us. But I'm kind of with Mr. Bielik. Once it becomes a regular route, would you not expect more traffic off of I-10 to use that instead of going through what has become a problematic area? Your model didn't show that, but you also said your model didn't factor in difficulty of travel.
That's correct. Yeah.
And the same way you say grade changes are a difficulty of travel, so is reconstruction of
That's
I-10.
correct,
So your model didn't,
We can't capture that.
you couldn't capture that
That's correct. Yeah.
factor.
Right. Once people see that there's another alternative there, there may very well be those that decide to go that route. Putting that back into perspective on that slide where, the distance on all of them are almost the same. So back to that first slide. So yeah, with I-10 shut down, you would think that it certainly attract traffic over to these other alternatives, and the Borderland Expressway being one of those for sure.
The estimates that you gave, 2,000 trucks a day pass through the city, that's not internal traffic? I wanted to make sure that I understood you correctly.
Yeah.
Okay, 2,000 trucks a day, if they take this new alternative route, whether they take the spur or go on around the new path, they still travel up Joe Battle. Either way. That's 166 trucks an hour. That's gonna be added capacity to that. Well, we'll be honest. It's not 166 an hour, but that's during the 12-hour peak. If it's spread out over 24, it's 80-something trucks an hour. Now, I understand that TxDOT is going to widen to one additional lane, but do we see studies that show that it's going to be able to handle that afterwards with the growth of the city out there as well? Or is this going to gridlock the east side of El Paso? That's my only concern is, do we have the plan to move that many trucks? Because it's an alternate route that's going to be at a less of a grade, so trucks are going to have less trouble taking this route, spend less fuel taking this route. And when I-10 shut down for so many years in deferred maintenance, it's going to be forced to take a different route.
Right.
I would like to see that TxDOT has the models that show that all that additional traffic isn't going to shut down the east side of El Paso.
Let me answer that question because we've looked at that as part of the Reimagine I-10 study. Reimagine I-10 assumes that the Borderland Expressway, 213, 404 are improved and in operation, It assumes that we've added an additional lane on 375. We're in the process. We'll be shortly adding an additional lane between Montana and 601. A few years from now, we'll be adding an additional lane from 601 further north. The only way that we get by with adding one additional lane on I-10, and assuming it's all in operation and there's no shutdown, is all of those other things in operation. Otherwise, it all breaks down.
If I might.
Well, I think there's been different ways of, the way the question has been presented, but I guess, Roger, I was interested to see if you considered other performance measures besides truck impact, truck traffic. And I've heard, the question by the mayor about northeast traffic being diverted, but you said you didn't look at that. Were there any other measures that you looked at besides impact of truck traffic?
Well, most of these are actually all traffic, not just truck. And it's looking at at two different scales. I mean, what's important here to understand is that through traffic, the 2,000 plus coming through, and then the 500 plus from the ports of entry, and it could be Boda as well, going up 54 and connecting to Borderland Expressway. But the difference is that, you could say, well, that 1,200 is almost half of that, but the 1,200 is internal and external. So there's a lot of drayage going on with truck traffic inside El Paso. So we haven't gotten to that point where we're able to do a more robust analyses to bring all of those things to light. So, if we need to do that, we can. There's no comparison to any other specific projects or anything like that. But what's important, I think, too, is that when we get down to this level here, we're looking at all traffic, not just trucks.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Kind of to Dr. No's point about diverting all through the east side, did this model, did it look at a fully functioning border highway? Because some of that is going to be diverted that way, that direction, is it not? Some of those 2,000 trucks a day are going to be diverted to the border highway.
Well, on the border highway itself, I think there's limitations right now because of the border highway west and its restrictions to trucks.
To trucks, okay. So that's not going to be the answer there.
At this point.
At this point.
It's going to be restricted to trucks because it's planned as a toll facility. If it was not a toll facility, then it could handle all traffic. But I also want to kind of go back to Dr. No. Last September's discussion brought up some concerns, and Dr. No and I actually talked before this, and on the east side, it's so congested in the morning today that the fear of offering something to people who aren't part of that current congestion but would add to it, and started looking at why is it congested right now. And some of this, I think we do have numbers in the plan, and some of the stuff I think we're missing. Right now, and this is just more observation, but it's congested because of the traffic going on to Fort Bliss exiting 601. Once you get past 601, it moves pretty well. So I think we're going to have to do something to work with Fort Bliss on trying to expedite getting onto base. On top of that, I started thinking about this, and we contacted Fort Bliss, and I don't know if all these numbers are available yet. They were really good about offering this. The hospital hasn't opened yet. When the hospital opens, the numbers that they provided me are pretty staggering. And that exit is prior to 601. So once the hospital opens, the congestion, Dr. No, that we see out there now is going to be exacerbated by the hospital itself, the coming and going. So we're not going to be able to get to 601 either. So what Mr. Bielik was talking about, these other projects are going to have to be put into play now, no matter what we do. Whether we think the Northeast Border Highway is a good project or not, we've got other things that are already starting to stack up that we got to take care of. And Fort Bliss, we'll share those numbers with everybody, but it was kind of a shock to me what the daily traffic they expect. It's higher, Rogers, than the number you offered going through 404. They're expecting a higher number than that daily. So I think no matter what happens, the discussion has brought something to the table that I don't think was on many people's radar screen. So that's got to be fixed no matter what, Dr. Moon.
May I respond? Let me get Mayor Padilla.
So I have a question with the New Mexico DOT. So it's gonna go through Anthony, right? We're gonna go through 404. So how many lanes are we gonna be having on the gap? Because right now, we have such a high impact on crashes. And how many lanes are we gonna add on Anthony Gap going through O'Hara Road, getting to, I guess, Santa Teresa? What would be how many lanes?
Mr. Chair, Mayor, so long-term, our plan is to have a 4-lane facility, which would be
Okay.
consistent with TxDOT's long-term plan.
Okay.
We are currently designing what would be alternating passing lanes, the Super 2. But again, if we can move forward with the combined infra grant, our goal
Mhm.
is a 4-lane facility,
4 lanes, okay.
divided highway.
Because we're gonna have a lot of traffic going through Anthony now with that. Okay, just wanna make sure. Thank you.
I guess this is along the lines there is looking at the sort of vision slide and extending to the sanitary support of entry. Is there anything that can speak about that extension there and timelines for that as well, in terms of its access to the International Port of Entry and connectivity?
From this was not part of that study, but I'm hearing that it is part of the infra grant in the presentation and you have all that backup in your packet.
Okay. When would the 404, in terms of the widening of that occur? Would that be simultaneously? Ideally, would that be around the same time with the Northeast, with the Borderland Expressway?
So actually, in my mind, I think we're a little bit ahead of the game only because we've had the accident concerns. So we're designing right now the interchange at 404 and I-10, and that one is scheduled for fiscal year '21. And then we're moving forward with the design for the entire corridor of 404, hoping that we can get additional funding. But we're already planning on constructing this regardless of what happens, only because of the accident history that we have in New Mexico, not necessarily because of the congestion that was discussed earlier. I think that provides added benefit to us to move forward with the combined grant. But we're moving forward regardless.
Great, thank you.
The problems, as far as morning traffic, you're right on the spur backing up, but also the merging of Montana northbound onto the loop backs it up because of those cars having to weave in. So there's a couple of bottlenecks there that TxDOT really needs to open up completely before we can realistically expect anything to work like we're talking about. It's not an if I-10 has an accident, here's an alternative route. I-10's going to be shut down. You've been warning us this for years now. It's going to be a long-term diversion of traffic through that route. Has TxDOT produced any kind of air quality projections that the community can have as far as outreach to them before anything is finalized? I mean, are we going to reach out to them and let them know what to expect with this other than just massive traffic?
We already have conformity on all 3 segments of the Montana project, and that includes the direct connects at Montana and 375, which are what we really need to completely cure that situation. We'll partially cure it with what we call the Loop 1 project. Those are the frontage roads north of Montana on 375, but that's already past air quality. That whole development, all the way through Phase 3 of Montana.
Okay. Doesn't say it won't change what's happening. You're saying that it'll pass the standards that allow us to proceed.
Correct.
What outreach does TxDOT plan on having to the communities that will be affected?
We've been out to the community for the past 4.5 years on the Montana project. We've been out to the community on the Loop 1 project, and we were out to the community just recently, last summer, I think it was in August, on the Northeast Parkway project.
Okay, I don't want you to misunderstand. I'm not saying that, I will vehemently oppose this going through the district out there, that entire east side of town. I think, though, that it needs to be opposed unless TxDOT has a solid plan in place ahead of time, not fix it after we divert the traffic, but ahead of time to prepare that area for that kind of change.
So that's part of the overall plan. It's also part of the reason we're going at now and trying to do a regional study so that we can take a look at how can we divert this traffic. A lot of it has to do with, for example, whether or not we have tolls on Border West. By the agreement that we have with the CRRMA, I can take the tolls off of Border West when we tear up I-10. I think there's legislation that's already been introduced to remove the tolls from Border West. If we don't have tolls on Border West, it will ease the situation with regard to Northeast Parkway, for example. You won't have quite as much demand there. Probably continue to have demand there for trucks because the Anthony Gap is so flat by comparison to Trans Mountain. And the trucks will try to stay out of the construction areas and not necessarily get on Border Highway because Border Highway only has 4 lanes, 2 in each direction. So there are a lot of moving parts to this, and we've been trying to look at this as a whole to see where things are going. And that's also how we've been trying to design and plan projects so that we keep as many lanes open as possible. For example, all throughout the GO 10 project, we've had nearly 4 years. For those 4 years, I would say 90 to 95% of the time, we've kept 3 lanes open in each direction. They may have been narrow lanes, there may be a concrete barrier right next to them. But that is part of what we do as we try to phase these projects and build them, is to look at those kinds of issues. It's not easy.
What is the elevation, if you know it, difference between the East Side Spaghetti Bowl and downtown?
Between the Spaghetti Bowl and downtown?
On the east side. The Americas interchange.
There's not I think it's less than 200 feet difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. No, the discussion in September, kind of caught me off guard because I think a lot of people thought that was bringing a new project to the board. And there's nothing wrong with having a lively discussion, and we've amended our TIP and our MTP to either add or delete. And, I wouldn't want to delete it, but this body can delete the project from our plan. It's in the plan. So I guess the first question is, do we want to keep it there? Even though that's not what I was proposing or on the agenda, wasn't to either delete the project. It was, well, since it's in the plan, and there's so few projects, if not the only one, that could be financed differently, is what this pass-through financing was proposing. So even though the item is talking about supporting a financing scheme, maybe the real vote whether is we like the project or not, which is okay. I was asked, and I went to TxDOT's commission meeting and made a proposal for statewide. And TxDOT's looking at putting together a project called based on the pass-through financing that I recommended, looking at $1 billion available. So now we would have to compete, maybe. But I think the discussion, again, brought some good things to light, got us looking at the congestion, is there other things that we can do? And as Mr. Bielik had said, Northeast Parkway wouldn't come first. These other improvements are already in the mix and are funded, if not phases of them. So the improvements north of Montana going up 601 would happen before Northeast Parkway, not the other way around, because it would be really difficult. And even now, if I-10 gets shut down, the alternative is Trans Mountain. So that already exists. So we would bring traffic onto that route no matter what. Some of it might be able to make it easy, some of it may not make it so well. So that's already there. We're already going to put strain on Trans Mountain if we don't do anything. So I would suggest, you support this based on those two things. Is it a project we should keep in the plan? If it's yes. If you don't think we should keep it in the plan at all, that's a possibility, just like we do no build sometimes.
And I would only
the financing that you're talking about, the pass-through financing, we get paid back depending on the traffic that goes through it.
That's correct.
So there's an incentive to encourage the most amount of traffic through there.
No, Doctor, no, because you have to set a minimum and a maximum. So there would not be an incentive, for instance, for the old TxDOT used to have these non-compete agreements that they're no longer able to do to help get onto toll projects. TxDOT went out and negotiated, if you build a toll, we won't do any improvements on our roads and we'll drive people crazy and they'll have to use yours. That doesn't happen anymore. In a financing procedure like this, there has to be a minimum and a maximum, so we already know what that is going in negotiated. So even if Bob Bielik got out there with signs himself and said, this is free, use it, it's not going to make any difference because there's going to be a maximum. And it would have to be that way because it would have to be budgeted through the cash flow of the agency anyway.
And
Let me get to the-
I understand the part where you're saying that this is going to happen first. My comments were just that I want to make sure that those things that are going to happen first are enough to cover the changes that's going to occur. And not just, yeah, we'll move it through, but it's going to be gridlock for 2 or 3 years out there.
Okay, let me get to the judge first and then.
Okay, well, I'd like to answer that question because the answer to that is no. We
And that's what I worry
won't, we won't catch up until we actually complete some of these. I mean, it's just that simple. The idea that if you don't build it, they won't come, that's not reality. It just is not reality. So, but we will minimize, our aim is to minimize that situation, not to alleviate it because we can't.
In that time span you mentioned a few minutes ago from to 2024 or whatever, what was that time span that I-10's going to be?
Well, out to
essentially out of commission?
2045, and what I said was that half to 2/3 of that time, I-10 will be under construction, some segment of it.
Judge?
And actually, it touches upon where the conversation was actually going. I know last time we discussed the funding mechanism and how this project may be one of the only ones that could qualify for this type of scheme, I guess, for lack of a better word. But I wondered if you could just elaborate on that a little bit more, Chairman. You briefly touched on it.
Well, the financing means it takes an outside partner. Even if we have projects that we personally like ourselves better, I think it kind of got convoluted by HMTB being here and saying that they were applying for a grant. Well, it sounds like, well, does my project qualify for that grant? Yeah, it could, but that's a separate deal. What makes this interesting is the Regional Mobility Authority here would have to be a participant. So if I had a project I liked better than this, I would first have to go to the Regional Mobility Authority and say, how do you like this project? Are you willing to issue bonds so that I could go out and raise the banner for it? So that's the only project that the Regional Mobility Authority has looked at in our entire region and said, we're willing to issue the bonds, because What I'm proposing is asking the Texas Department of Transportation to fund us annually the same amount of dollars it would cost the RMA to pay back those bonds. So the RMA can go do it now if they had a source of revenue. And so what I'm saying to the RMA is, you guys like this project, you put some time and money in it, their board's already looked at expanding it and done some work. HNTB looked at it separately as, we think this might be good for a grant. So then I said, well, let's muddy the waters even more, and there is a revenue possibility from the Texas Department of Transportation, because that takes some pressure off of them if they like this project, because otherwise we need to ask them for $284 million all up at one time. Well, what if you don't have the $284 million? Could you give us 20 million or so a year towards that 284? So this is the way TxDOT's able to write off on their books that they leveraged and financed a $284 million project without having to spend it all in one time. They would budget that over a 10, 15-year period. 601, you heard the good news as far as that goes, is being paid off another year or so, 2019, I think 2020.
2021.
2021. So we would be asking, not even for this to, it would supplant that, because TxDOT's already budgeting a certain amount of money that they're paying towards that project. So it would be like, you're already used to paying it. You won't give us $284 million up front in cash, but would you consider paying so many $1 million a year, equivalent of somebody else going and borrowing money? And the reason TxDOT likes this as a statewide initiative now is they don't have any bonding capacity internally. So they're thinking of going out to the MPOs across the state now and saying, do you have anybody that will come forward like an RMA and borrow money on your behalf that we could pay the debt service on? So TxDOT's looking at possibly $1 billion a year in added construction costs and budgeting $100 million, for instance, in, I can't say debt service because we're not allowed, the state's not allowed to pay somebody else's debt. TxDOT would negotiate to fund you the same amount of money you need to pay your debt.
Thank you.
Let me get you.
Sure.
So all of this information has been great, and I think the question for me is not whether or not this project merits being on the Destino plan or deleted, but whether or not it merits being pushed forward as a priority. And so we've talked about how we don't have a standard or a mechanism to prioritize which projects are best. So this information that's been brought to us today, I think, is a best practice, and this is what we should have in the future when we are trying to determine which projects are priority in the plan and which are not. So, so I'm trying to really understand, because I think your modeling is telling the story, but I just don't understand how to read it. And so my question is, I think it's 2 slides back, where it says like -1% on I-10. Can you explain what that means?
What that means is
Right there.
that the improvement in traffic flow is not very significant compared to what we're seeing in the other parts of the region. So, you know, thinking that it will relieve traffic on I-10 basically on a normal weekday when there's not anything going on that creates an issue where we need to divert around, you're not going to see that many people taking the Borderland Expressway.
Okay.
So he could have said, there's 100 cars every morning, now there'll be 99 cars.
Okay.
Well, it's a little bit better than that, but we do have some numbers on that, but
So,
it's
so
not
this
that
is saying that if the expressway was built, then what you're going to see is 1% less traffic on I-10.
Yes.
Okay. So, and I think those are the models that, I mean, does it merit us paying, X amount of dollars to see a reduction of 1%? Am I understanding that correctly?
At that point, yes, it's 1%.
And this is for 2045?
2045.
Okay, so that's really where my concern is. are there other priority projects in the plan that have more precedent or just more priority than this project? And I'm looking at this graph and I think it's yes. I think it's a yes. I think the priority should be on I-10, which we do see that the entire corridor is going to take millions of dollars, but there's opportunity to phase it in and to push that project forward. I'm not opposed to the project. I just don't think at this time it is the priority of the city. And I think this is what we were looking for, is do we have the justification to push this project as a priority? And I think this slide is saying no, which is unfortunate because I wanted to see this push forward, but I just can't support something.
That's on the interstate.
That's correct.
But Doctor knows the reverse. If this showed like a 20% drop in Interstate 10, and I'm not speaking for him, using as example.
I'm gonna wait and see if I agree with you.
Of the 100 cars that there were, 20 more of them now are using the loop, and he wouldn't like that. But it shows a 20% reduction on, I guess that's
Trans Mountain?
Trans Mountain. But again, as far as the priority, you're absolutely right. If we were all going after the same dollar, if there was a grant that all of our projects were subject to, the grant applied to all 100 projects, then it would be very, very important to grade those 100, number 1 to 100. What I'm suggesting, though, is that this is the only project that can even be funded this way. So it wouldn't be taking away from other projects if we were able to get it, because there's no guarantees. It doesn't mean TxDOT would still do it. But I do think that, and I don't know, Roger, did you have the numbers showing more of the loop and Dyer? Because again, this shows a very slight reduction in traffic on Interstate 10, but it does show improvements in the northeast area.
Let me address that. Because this is very, very misleading. In 2045, after I-10 has been expanded and it's complete, it only pulls off 1%. That's not going to be the case, because remember, we've got between $2 and $4 billion worth of construction to do on I-10. And I'm not going to be able to get those kinds of numbers very quickly. So that's why there's going to be a long period of time, as much as 20 years, that we're going to have elements of I-10 torn up. If I don't have Northeast Parkway in operation, that simply means that the congestion on I-10 and the delay is going to go completely through the roof. It's going to be a stop-and-go deal. So when we try to look at priorities, you have to look at the whole region and what's happening throughout the region as you are going through capacity restrictions because of construction. And can you get the funding? If I'm trying to get $2 to $4 billion worth of funding on I-10, another source of funding to get this done early is a big plus, because then I can get this done and I can get some of that relief off of I-10, because the first segment of I-10 is going to be the downtown segment. There are not a lot of alternatives to the downtown segment.
And I completely understand that the financing is the right time. I do agree there. And the infra grant program, I've understood that there's other projects that could qualify for that funding. Could I-10, improvement of I-10, help supplement, be supplemented with the infra grant?
Theoretically, but again, infra grants are a lot smaller. The reason this one seemed to be a good candidate for an infra grant is it's a two-state project. It's multi-state. It shows that kind of cooperation. It serves a regional purpose. I-10, if you look at I-10, 85 to 90% of all the traffic on I-10 is local. So it's hard to argue that it's a regional purpose, even though it's a primary freight route for Texas to and from the West Coast. So we run into those kinds of issues when we try to do that on I-10. That's why we're looking at,
And just my last
This one.
question for New Mexico dot, I understand that you're counting on the infra grant in order to complete your side. Is that correct? So is the commitment still there without the infra grant?
So I'm glad you brought that up because there is a little bit of point of clarification. So we are completing the I-10 404 interchange regardless of what takes place.
Okay.
That's already budgeted. It's already being designed. That is currently in our STIP for fiscal year 21. In fiscal year 23, we currently have the Super 2, which will be designed and sitting on a shelf, ready to go, regardless of what happens with the
Right.
infra grant or what takes place today. Discussions that we've had internally to the department is because of where our accidents are, is we may move away from the Super 2 and now begin to build the full 4-lane build-out from the interchange headed east through the 404 gap, just because of where the accidents are taking place. What will happen is if we apply for this infra grant and get it, my fiscal year 23 project right now, which is currently not fully funded, becomes fully funded.
Okay.
New Mexico is moving, well, and that would include the 213 corridor.
Okay.
So right now, our projects are only inclusive of the 404. We're moving forward with that corridor regardless. What the infra grant does for us is it expedites it.
Okay.
The other thing that I would like to expand, if I can, is what Bob was talking about. The other thing, the benefit of the infra grant on this one is a big part of the application process is the money that each agency is bringing forward to that application. So we will have already included the 404 I-10 project. That will be money spent that we've already obligated towards that corridor. The money that the representative is bringing up would be money that TxDOT comes forward with towards this infra grant.
Mhm.
So in my mind, that additional funding brings this infra grant to the top.
Does TxDOT funding, could that help fund the New Mexico site? No?
No.
So,
There's a way to do that using the RMA, but not on this type of financing.
okay, so, okay.
But in the
so-
same vein, as Trent just said, I mean, just me showing you my cards and you showing you yours, I mean, it helps both causes. The Donnie that was here doing the FHWA was talking about the innovation, showing the cooperation. Again, there's no guarantees.
Mhm.
And even if this was, positive and is approved that we support this as a resolution to TxDOT, I mean, we still have to try to get our own DOT in the state to look at this over all the other infra grants that are being proposed around the state. Is it worth it to the commission to throw a bone our way? Because I would say it does. I mean, we're going to be able to take a good case to the commission because this is only still a first step. There's no guarantee that the
and so,
infra grant goes.
and so where I'm going with that is knowing that TxDOT dollars can't be paid on your end, New Mexico has their funds committed, and it expedites your funding so long as the infra grant is awarded.
What it does is the infra grant then comes to New Mexico, which would free up that money that we already are moving towards obligating for that corridor
Okay.
to do something else.
Okay.
And
I
that's
see.
going to be our sales pitch to our own DOT too. We're trying to
Okay.
tell TxDOT this frees up some money because again, as far as the state goes, we have this in our plan as just asking for the whole 284 million. We're not saying split it up, give us a little now. So we are going to give them some food for thought. It's going to be hard for them not to at least take notice and go, there's a possibility of an infra grant, which means that the state of Texas doesn't put up the 284 million and doesn't even have to finance the whole amount that we're even talking about today, because that's still the wild card. If the state of Texas DOT says, we like the proposal, we think we'll consider, this pass-through financing as a project, then the state takes this to the Federal Highway Administration as a grant application, and that grant dollar amount, if it's awarded, you subtract that out of the amount of money that the state of Texas was considering to put up. And so, again, it's just all like, if it works, it does. If it doesn't work, we're back to where we were. for the 284 million or get lucky and hopefully that HNTB writes a great grant proposal and they get it on their own. And I don't remember from the presentation how much of the total dollars that was being asked for in the grant. Let's say we don't,
It was like 300 million.
I don't remember his whole amount. I see Eduardo shaking his head, but I just don't remember what the amount was.
Thank you.
Alderman Miller?
Just, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but to go back to your modeling effort, which is based on fully functioning I-10, fully functioning Trans Mountain, is there any way you can go back and rerun that model by placing a degree of difficulty of travel both on I-10 and on Trans Mountain?
Well, like-
Because your model does not take that into account.
Can you put a queen-size
Yeah,
mattress in lane 2?
there's probably things that we can do. I don't know that, like I
With
was
the
telling you,
frame.
some things that model is restricted as far as how it captures the grade. There's probably ways we could place a restriction. I don't know, what
I
that
just
would be.
don't believe that that's
It-
showing
I-
us
it
the
absolutely-
true picture of, it may be showing us the true picture in 2045, but it's not showing us the true picture in 2025.
No, it's very, yeah, it's very difficult to do something like that. I mean, we would have to go in and say, okay, well, what's the degree of difficulty based on when I-10's being reconstructed at this time and those kind of things.
Well,
Yeah.
I just don't believe it's
Yeah,
providing a true picture
I agree.
of what we're actually gonna see.
I agree.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I just needed to clarify one more thing for the mayor. So she had asked about the impacts to Anthony. Our project begins at the I-10-404 interchange and moves east. As part of our study, we looked at that section between the interstate west towards 460. It didn't warrant the cost for right-of-way and those kinds of things. So I just wanted to clarify, the impacts to Anthony itself will be minimal only because we're moving from the interstate east. So,
Now, I understand there's public comment on this item.
Mr. Rooney? Public comment?
Mike Rooney, Mr. Chairman, would you grant me 1 extra minute, please? Could you be so kind?
Are there any other public speakers? No. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Roger, thank you and your staff for trying to quantify it. I know this, here's, let me give you some stuff. Here's 22 copies, Roger. Here's 22 copies for the people at the table. If you could pass them around, 1 copy for your files. I'm sorry, the only thing I'm disappointed in is you didn't give the history of the project. So since this board turns over quite a bit over time, this isn't a project that just parachuted in. Since I had to pay my own money to do the copying, I only made 1 copy of this that I'm going to pass around. Please pass it around, return it to the MPO for file. Here's an article that's run in the Sunday El Paso Times for 2 Sundays in a row, and it'll say Future TxDOT Borderland Expressway. So this indicates that this is a project that was going to, is still a valid project. The second one is extending the trolley to out Alameda towards UMC, and I think the cost on that is a little over $142 million. You pass it, and you'll see how this is going to come around. When Senator Shapley, after the Court of Inquiry, was advocating for transportation projects and for more money from El Paso, he used to use a figure of around 17,000. And the way he would explain it, and it was very dramatically, over a piece of roadway that one loaded 18-wheeler would travel over, that would equate to around 17,000 automobiles. I have about 3.5 boxes of meeting notes and agendas and stuff over the years I've been here. At my age, I didn't have the luxury of going through all of that. So you can see excessive truck weight and highway deterioration. Officials, such a tractor trailer has the same impact on an interstate as at least 9,600 automobiles. So if you use Senator Shapley's higher number of 17,000 for the road damage, or if you use this as a more documented number, that was the reason the Northeast Parkway was an attractive project back when we didn't have any money and when we put in a project. And it was the only project that the community was going to let go through. The other project was the Borderland West project. They were so expensive, they were going to very costly, so it was a big fight over what we would do. And the tolls had a lot to do with it. Now, it sure seems like, and this was documented in the El Paso Times. This was a project this body intended to move forward on. Now, if it seems like the folks in the Northeast, and I went to an HNTB TxDOT briefing. It was a community input meeting at the Northeast Civic Association. They were having those through the town. They were doing it for the Northeast Parkway, the Border Highway West. So it seemed like the folks from the Northeast might have a good case if you went through and took the number of highway accidents from I-10 from 375 on the east side to Trans Mountain on the west side, and you added those up all through the years that this project's been delayed. You took the deaths, the injury, the physical cost of the accident itself, the loss of time, pain and suffering, plus all the people that are backed up from this. I just wonder, since this is the city that made courts of inquiry famous, now you cannot, we raised such a stink with the state, you can't go to the state anymore. But when I looked at those laws, it certainly seems like you can use them locally. So what if some injured citizens came forward and documented the total cost of losses and question why you have the luxury of wanting to extend in 5 years. Okay, thank you. But you can see where I'm going. It's a good project. It's always been a good project. Representative Pickett, I thank you for bringing it up. I know many of you, because of the, you felt blindsided, so this has been a very good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rooney. Okay. Are there any other questions by the board? Do I have any motions?
What is the action?
Well, the action would be as listed in item number 3.
I would move that we put forth a resolution in support of moving this forward.
So I have a motion on the floor made by Alderman Miller. Is there a second? The motion has been seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Nay. I have one nay, made by Dr. No. Abstentions. Motion carries. Item has been approved. Item number 4.
That's okay. We'll take care of that.
Item number 4 is discussion and action to approve recommendations from the Transportation Project Advisory Committee to approve resolution by the TPB and approve recommendations from the TPAC to adopt the State of New Mexico's PM2 Pavement and Bridge, and PM3 System Performance, Freight and Congestion Mitigation, and Air Quality, CMAQ, 4-year performance targets.
Good morning. Greg McNichol with the TPAC Committee. You've got 4 items from us today. This is the first one. This is a part of the MAP 21 requirements, as you read in your backup. And we're recommending, in the case of what we're doing here within this MPO, is in the state of New Mexico is adopting the same standards that the state of New Mexico has adopted. And so we're agreeing to those standards here for this MPO is what we're recommending to y'all.
Any discussion? Any motion? Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, motion has been seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. Abstentions. Motion carries unanimously. Item number 4 has been approved. Item number 5.
Item number 5, discussion and action to approve recommendations from the Transportation Project Advisory Committee to approve resolutions by the TPB and to approve recommendations from the TPAC to adopt the State of New Mexico's PM2,
State of Texas.
State of Texas PM2 Pavement and Bridge, and PM3 System Performance, Freight and Congestion Mitigation, and Air Quality, CMAQ 4-year performance targets.
This again, just like I mentioned before, this MPO does have obviously its game is not only in New Mexico but Texas also. This is the Texas side of that. The Texas, we're recommending to the MPO that we adopt the same standards that the state of Texas has as it relates to Texas projects.
Who's got the higher standard?
I don't remember. I apologize.
They're different.
They are different.
Because New Mexico has time reliability, we don't, but we have.
Right, some of their measures are different too.
Yeah, and that is because of the threshold in population, being that Texas and Dallas and Houston have to commit to that. But for our purposes here in at the El Paso MPO, we're only looking at what is required at 1 million in population. So we're adopting and only the 4-year standard across the board for both Texas and New Mexico, where we don't have to do 2-year targets, but just only 4-year targets. But those things you're talking about, sir, will be coming back in 4 years because the threshold will change to 200,000.
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor, and the motion has been seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously.
We move to item 6, discussion and action to approve recommendations from the Transportation Project Advisory Committee to amend the Destino 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan and Destino 2019-2022 Transportation Improvement Program. 2A, amend IH-10 widening projects, MPO ID number 1405X-CAP/CSJ 2121-01-094 for widening from 4 to 6 lanes divided from 0.22 miles west of FM 1905 Antonio Street, Texas, New Mexico state line to SH 20 Mesa Street to $87,951,432 of CAT 2M for a total of $124,931,432 of CAT 2M, $20,150,000 of CAT 7 STP-MM funds, and $3,280,920 of CAT 11 district discretionary for a total funding of $148,370,352 in fiscal year 2021. B, amend IH-10 widening project, MPO ID number 1406X-CAP/CSJ 2121-02-160 for widening from 6 to 8 lanes divided from SH 20 Mesa to IH 10/US 85/Sunland Park interchange to program $20,420,000 of Cat 7 STP-MM funds and $3,560,000 of Cat 11 district discretionary for a total funding of $23,980,000 in fiscal year 2022. C, amend Loop 375 Americas Joe Battle Winding Project MPO ID number F05/CSJ 2552-03-049 for winding from 4 to 6 lanes divided from Bob Hope Drive to Zaragoza Road to program $12,274,620 of Cat 4 funds and $17,757,791 of Cat 2 for a total funding of $30,032,411 in fiscal year 2020. D, Program Loop 375 Widening Project, MPO ID number F061X-CAP/CSJ 2552-04-047 for winding from 4 to 6 lanes divided from to Zaragoza Road to point 33 MISW of Zaragoza Road to $4,467,589 of Cat 2M funds in fiscal year 2020. E, administratively amend the Loop 375 Americas Ramps and Frontage Roads Reconfiguration Project, MPO ID number F048X/CSJ 2552-03-058 to move the letting date from fiscal year 2018 to fiscal year 2019. F, amend US 52/180 Montana Avenue Expressway and Frontage Roads Phase 2 Project, MPO ID number F407B-CAP/CSJ 0374-02-100 from Glover Reach Drive to Zaragoza Road, FM 659, identify $180,195,000 of Cat 2M funds and $28,388,776 of Cat 4 for a total funding of $146,583,776 and move from fiscal year 2028 to fiscal year 2026. G, amend SL Whitening Project, MPO ID number F053B-CAP/CSJ 2552-02-029 for winding from 2 to 4 lanes divided from SS 601 to BU 54 Dyer Street to identify $30,385,000 of Cat 2M funds and $3,500,000 of Cat 11 district discretionary for a total funding of $3,885 in fiscal year 2025.
That's a mouthful. I too had to read through that at the TPAC meeting, so it took me a while on a glass of water just to get through it myself. This one is one, obviously, there's a lot of trying to just get the project now, all these 7 projects aligned. A lot of the money is TxDOT money that's just trying to better arrange it so that we can get these projects moving forward. And I'm going to defer to TxDOT with any in-depth questions.
And I'll ask Eddie Voltaire to come up to talk about in-depth questions, but remember, we've been in a lapse state, so we haven't been able to make these kind of changes since last June. And a lot of these, Dr. No, actually go to what you were talking about, and that is getting some of these projects in the queue in the right place so that they will relieve and provide additional capacity when we have I-10 done. So we're trying to take a look at the whole region to get projects at the right time so that it'll give us that kind of relief. So Eddie, if you want to come up, and if you have any detailed questions on these.
Good morning, Eddie Voltaire, Texas Department of Transportation. So the first few are actually on the west side, but as the study pointed out earlier, that study in 2045 assumes that everything in the plan is already in place. So the movement that's going on in the first 2 or 3, A, B, and C, is Interstate 10 has some funds programmed on it on the west side that were in segments from the state line to Mesa Street, and then another segment from Mesa Street to Sunland Park. Because of all the development and growth that has been happening in the traffic congestion with the blades in the Artcraft area, what we've done is analyze where the need is greatest. And so what we're doing here is shifting some funds from the second part of it, which was the the Sunland Park area, over to the Artcraft area, because we know that there's going to be a lot of development that just we heard about in the news. We also know we already have existing problems. This only covers the I-10 improvements. We have a future study that we're going through right now that actually will entertain some connector ramps at Artcraft. But this is the first phase of trying to address that situation on the west side. As we go down, CD at the Loop 375 projects down south of I-10 that have Zaragoza and Bob Hope, that merely is splitting those two up, more of a mechanical reason. We have control section job numbers that, with TxDOT world and Federal Highway world, we have to split those up wherever those sections end. So all we're doing there is splitting those funds for a project that will actually add a lane from Interstate 10 down south to Zaragoza. There's some improvements up to Bob Hope as well, but that's all that project does is it was a former project that had managed lanes that now will just be an additional lane. And then as far as the Montana projects, we have a project that just let phase 1 of Montana for approximately $121 million. That goes from, in total with the environmental, from Zaragoza all the way to Global Reach. That will add overpasses and a freeway facility in the center of Montana there, creating a controlled access facility, which will improve traffic. What this here is setting up for phase 2. So $121 million buys you a lot, doesn't buy you everything that we need. So what we're doing is putting this $148 million in for phase 2, which will end up expanding that all the way to include the Global Reach end cap of an overpass, getting rid of that bottleneck there, and then all the way to Zaragoza, creating some additional congestion relief there. And it also completes the concrete pavement that we'll be needing because of the demands in that area. We'll have concrete main lanes, and we'll have concrete frontage roads in those areas. Phase 3 is not funded, and that are the direct connectors. So that's another $120-30 million. Of course, we know it's an important project, so we're currently looking for funds for that.
Can I ask Eddie a question?
Sure.
Eddie, would you clarify what entity, whether it's the city or TxDOT, controls the traffic signalization?
Sure.
Along Montana and especially and exclusively where it meets 375 and Joe Battle?
Sure. Anything within the city limits is controlled by the city of El Paso. Now, what we do is we'll install it on our projects, and then we have an agreement with the city of El Paso where they will maintain the signal timing.
Because I don't know if Dr. No's getting the complaints, but I'm getting lots of complaints about the traffic signalization going east on Montana at 375. So would that be Ted Marcus?
Yes. So the current situation, yes, will be Ted Marcus. Now, what is great about
I was wondering. I just, okay, I got it.
What Phase 1 will do when completed, and it's a long project, but we actually have designed that bridge at 375 in the years past.
And I did pull a mattress out of
the roadway?
off of Montana yesterday.
So that interchange will become free flow. That
As
as you
part
go.
of which phase?
As Phase 1.
Yeah.
So we're already going to be constructing that. So that whole backup that happens east of Loop 375 will have a much better situation with this first phase. That's already included, funded.
And I just have one suggestion. When I've had people tell me that they've tried to communicate this to TxDOT, and TxDOT just says, we'll take a look at it. I think you need to say, here's Ted Marcus's number.
Oh, we do.
The answer to that is yes, we do. I've got a couple of questions.
Hold on, let me get the Senator.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, two questions, and this is more related to process, I guess, more than anything else, because I suspect that there is a need for these widening of roads, or maybe I'm misunderstanding. But on all of these, it seems like we're widening roads, you know, from 4 to 6 lanes and so forth, and using some money from somewhere, including discretionary funds, for these changes. So my question is this because the initial projections for the need in the beginning were off somehow, and we didn't properly estimate how many lanes were going to be needed? Or is this just part of the process, kind of like with change orders in construction, where you know, you get bids and you always anticipate there's going to be some change orders in order to meet the actual cost of the construction?
To answer that, on Loop 375, for example, that was planned to go from 4 to 6 lanes from Bob Hope North, from Bob Hope all the way to downtown. It was originally going to go to 6 lanes, but managed lanes. That was the segment that we were using tolls in order to get it into the program. What happened was we built the 6 lanes through part of it up to Zaragoza. They are no longer tolled. We always had the managed lanes in from Bob Hope to Zaragoza, but when we looked at taking the managed lane or the tolled lane off of it, FHWA said, well, that changes the project. It's going to change the distribution on the lanes, so you have to go back through the air quality process. It was originally scheduled to be part of the same project where we're doing the frontage roads, which we've already let, but we had to split them there. So it was always planned to go to 6 lanes. This is just when we needed to do it.
Mm-hmm. And the same applies to some of the other projects?
Well, the other projects over on the west side, for example, we've always planned to go to 6 lanes up to the state line. What's changed over there was moving the Union Pacific multimodal facility out to Santa Teresa in 2014. And that's completely changed those travel patterns. That's why we've had to go back and take another look at Artcraft and Paseo del Norte, because now we're going to put the Great Gray Wolf or whatever it is on the other corner up there.
I was wondering if this is connected to that.
So,
Well, if I can say, I mean, there's been clear issues with Artcraft for at least
Oh,
the last 4 years.
Sure.
You know, they have these about 245-foot solar, the wind turbines that literally shut down traffic for upwards of an hour.
Yeah.
And because of a rush hour and the time they're doing it, it really debilitates a lot of the local traffic. So this was an issue really on that western side of Artcraft and I-10, regardless of West Hill Marketplace and the other proposed development.
Right, and what we're doing here, the Reimagine I-10 and the ArtCraft study that we have separately are coming up with the ultimate for that. What we're talking about here is taking that money from Mesa to the state line. Actually, we're looking at the money from Sunland Park to Mesa, saying, well, we probably don't need that additional lane right away because we'll have the collector-distributor lanes in effect. So let's go to ArtCraft and take a look at putting 2 return bridges in there, maybe doing some widening, some modification within the existing right-of-way in order to deal with the issues like those blades, because they're originally 120-foot blades and they went to 160-foot blades, and the last one I saw coming through was 225 feet. And they just completely wipe out that intersection. So there are a lot of things that we have to do there. Right now, all of the traffic that makes the U-turn has to go through the ArtCraft Bridge because we don't have the Texas returns on that bridge. So you have a lot of traffic going to the community college, for example, that makes that U-turn, really balls up that intersection badly. So those are the kind of things that we're really looking at, and we're trying to prioritize to get traffic moving in various areas.
Well, yes, and thank you for that explanation. I think that's answers my question. Just a follow-up question then on the money that shifted from, say, that Sunland portion over to ArtCraft. Is that money somehow going to be available to get back to that particular project? Or is that just lost forever?
Well, I hope it's not lost forever. It's going to be part of what we're asking for on the total $2 to $4 billion for everything that we need to do on I-10. You know, I've said a lot, I think probably since I first joined this board about 6.5 years ago, I-10 is at the end of its useful life. I mean, it's that simple. And most of the bridges along I-10 are at their end of their useful life. We're also faced now, since this is a major freight route, of getting 18 feet of clearance underneath every bridge on I-10 because that's a new standard, largely driven by those blades that we've been talking about. So hopefully we will get that money back, but we're going to have to get into the Clear Lanes program, a couple of the other discretionary programs that the Transportation Commission has in order to get that done.
A couple of questions, Eddie. On the southern part of the Loop 375, is this going to solve some of the issues that we have currently with Alameda, the ramp on Alameda?
Yeah.
And are we talking about changing the ramps at, Socorro Road?
Yeah, yes. So we actually have a project that let in October, which is the frontage roads and ramp reversals. We were able to get about 90% of that project done. We had a little chunk that we're still looking for funds for. So that project will actually reverse the ramps. It'll create a bridge over the railroad tracks, so when you exit for Alameda, you're going to exit much farther to the north, and the queue will be a lot greater. We're also improving the Alameda intersection with the Alameda project. So all those are working together to solve that problem. In addition to that, we worked with you all, and the ramps actually work really well with your Wind Road project. So now trucks won't be queuing up, exiting Saragossa, trying to get through the port of entry. We're going to make it where the ramps are redirecting them towards your Wind Road project, and the queue will be outside of a high-speed facility.
And just a comment, Mr. Chair. The Loop 375 in Montana is a problem not just because of the signalized intersection. It's a problem because east of the loop, Montana doesn't have any connectivity anywhere else. So the city is undertaking an east side master plan to look at connectivity and how we can provide additional connections, between, north and south and east and west, so we can reduce the demand on that particular intersection. So the project that Texas is doing will help a lot, but it's still not the answer for the whole development that is happening, from the Loop East. So we still have a lot of work to do.
One more quick 1-minute update. So what's not on this list, but I wanted to update you on, is we do have a project from on Loop 375 from Montana up to Spur 601 to add a lane to the center and frontage roads. So that, I think Bob stated that. In addition to that, we are working with Fort Bliss. Right now, we meet monthly. We're talking with them about the Spur 601 interchange. We're also talking with them about Sergeant Major, which they've changed to a public access. It was never intended to be that. It was always a construction access. Working with them on a project to fund that, to make that a fully operational state level type interchange. So that would mean improving the ramps, that would mean improving the interchange, getting that queue off of the main lanes.
Eddie, do you have, I apologize, do you have those numbers from them about the opening of the hospital?
I do not have those with me right now. We could.
No, I didn't mean for you to repeat them, that they are sharing them, you do have that?
Oh, yeah, we're.
Because what you're also talking about, if you take, if you go Purple Heart, what Eddie's talking about is past 601, you still see the signs that says construction vehicles only. And that still exists. It's a pretty hard, tight, narrow underpass, and that's where they unload the 50 cal when they're coming up training. You see it along the wall there, but.
So we didn't build that facility. That was actually.
But are they planning on opening an additional security entrance to dissipate some of the traffic?
So they're planning to making Sergeant Major their main opening.
Because right now you exit 601 and everybody has to come in the base there.
Correct.
And for a while, they were allowing more than construction further north. Are they talking about opening that up?
So the challenge we're facing is they're actually looking at closing their gates on Spur 601 and introducing traffic north of Spur 601 at that Sergeant Major. That's what.
They're reducing the number of open gates that they have, and they're going to concentrate them all up at Sergeant Major, which is one of the reasons we're working with them. And by the way, anytime we bring up the hospital in our meetings with the folks from Fort Bliss, they only laugh. And I'm not sure why, but.
Because they know how much traffic it's going to pull. That bridge is already out of date. They built just a 3-lane bridge, not a 4-lane.
No. That's all included in everything that we're looking at north of Montana. So we do have a study going on there. It's broken up into segments to anticipate the hospital, the changes that they're making. We're having to adjust.
And the state is still offering the northwest corner of Montana 375 for development. It's for sale.
Yes.
Contact General Land Office and they'll give you a price.
Phase 1 will give them access to that property.
And then it's going to go quick, once there's access.
That's all I have.
Any other questions on these items?
Mr. Chair, if I may, just a little cleanup on the agenda. Item E, I'm asking that we delete it from the agenda. It's not necessary for all practical purposes. It's just a bookkeeping item. The item will be able to move to 2019 for letting purposes.
It's B?
D.
D.
I'm sorry, E. E.
Can you show me?
E.
The one that says administratively amended.
Yeah, we don't need that one.
D.
Chair,
Yes, sir.
I would move that we approve these items A through G with the exception, and while at the same time deleting item E.
Okay, so I have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? The motion has been seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously.
Item number 8.
7.
Oh, sorry. Item number 7. Discussion and action to approve recommendations from the Transportation Project Advisory Committee to approve the November 2019 project readiness report with any necessary recommendations.
Just to give you hands up, there are 25 projects that were reviewed, if you will. 3 were what we call a high alert. I know that MPO staff has worked with those agencies on trying to understand, making sure they stay active and that there's not a problem with them. You had 1 that was in a medium category, 5 of them in a low category, and the rest had no flags, if you will. So if you got specific questions, I don't know if you want to go through and look at them all. You might want to focus on the high alerts if that's your choice.
Well, are there any questions? Yes, sir.
Roger, did you update based on the update that the city of El Paso gave you for all the projects?
Some of that information came in rather late, and we weren't able to. It'll be in the next one. We did have a specific motion on the TPAC agenda, and those things that were noted there did get updated. And some of those other things, we've already put them in the database. This report's already generated, and we didn't get to go back and put some of that information.
Just that, this information is a little bit out of date.
Can you speak to the high alerts that the city
The information that is in here is not current. We have provided an update that will lower the thresholds on those red alerts to something different. We provided those updates to the MPO on the status of every single project that has an alert. We believe that, they should be downgraded from red or from yellow to be in either medium to low, high alert.
On a couple of projects in here that are a high alert, and it's because they're still going through the projects of no air quality concern for conformity purposes. And we're just really monitoring it more than anything, and those consultative calls have already been set up. So we'll be getting more information as that happens in the next couple of weeks or so. The CBD4 project that is a high alert is just because we're wanting to assure that, and it's actually out in 2020, and it's not a major concern right now, but we want to assure that that project moves along as it should because of the importance that it has, especially to the downtown area when the Border West Expressway comes in. So we're really just kind of keeping an eye on it. There's nothing here that was, as the TPAC looked at this, that was a concern for reprogramming anything.
I was going to add too, I think this is a really good report because from all the agencies are allowed to kind of go back and make sure that we're staying on track. And I think that's what we're finding this report is doing for us. It allows us to make sure that we do that we solve problems before they're really a problem.
Any discussion? Seeing none, at this moment, I'll take a motion to approve item number 7.
So moved.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? The motion has been seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Item number 7 has been approved.
Thank you.
Item number 8.
Item number 8, discussion and action for conformity strategy for the Doña Ana County, New Mexico ozone non-attainment.
So, as we've discussed in previous meetings, there's now a non-attainment issue that we have to deal with in the New Mexico portion of our planning area. It's under the new 2015 8-hour ozone standard, and a portion of Sunland Park, New Mexico, has been determined to be in non-attainment. And if we don't get the conformity determination by August the 3rd of 2019, the El Paso MPO will go into a conformity lapse. So the MPO has aggressively moved forward in developing the modeling for that and the analyses. As a matter of fact, we'll be submitting the air quality pre-analysis plan today. But before we did that, we wanted to run this through the board to make sure that the board understands what's going on and that we're going in the direction that you determined that we should. To get to the point where we need to be able to demonstrate conformity, we need to submit, like I said, the pre-analysis plan and get the modeling finished. We're almost done with that. As a matter of fact, we're going through the QA/QC for it right now. We've developed a new base year for comparison to the Destino model because there's no budget, and I mean emissions budget for that. And that being said, there's a couple of tests that we have to run. We're already coordinating that effort with the consultative partners and with the Texas A&M Transportation Institute to help us with the emissions modeling. And we'll incorporate all of that information into the conformity document. The goal is to be able to get through that process and bring it back to the board by the end of January. And I will tell you right now that it presents some pretty major challenges, but that is the goal. And the reason that we're trying to make sure that we get it back to you in a timely manner is, as we've known in the past, that it takes some time for the federal partners to get through the conformity review. We just want to be able to give them ample time, make sure that we don't run into a problem. Again, if we don't get this done by the August 3rd, 2019 deadline, we will go into a conformity lapse. And that's why we're aggressively moving forward with this. And I want to make one other, point out one other issue that this is an opportunity if we needed to go back and amend other projects, like we do when we do an amendment to the plan. It has to go through the process of getting the approval of the actual plan and the financial part of that plan and the modeling, and all of that is a lot more time consuming. In this case, what we're talking about is just demonstrating conformity for this new requirement. So the MPO staff recommendation is to proceed with the development of the transportation conformity report for the ozone non-attainment for New Mexico portion of the El Paso MPO planning area, and not add or change any capacity projects in the Texas portion of the El Paso MPO planning area at this time. That will allow us to go ahead and take care of what we need to get this conformity, get it out of the way, not run into a conformity lapse, and then after that, if we need to come back and make amendments to the plan, we can do it at that time. That would be the recommendation, at least from the El Paso MPO.
And Roger, does a conformity lapse affect only the added capacity projects or all projects?
It's
Just
added capacity projects.
So all the 4 to 6 lanes that Bob was talking about earlier would be affected?
No. That's already in, and that's in the next report. Under the Destino conformity, all of that can move forward. What I'm saying is if we were to come back at this point and say we want to add another project that adds capacity that's not in the Destino, then we're adding capacity that doesn't exist.
We don't have any of those that we can think of anywhere, do we? Is there anything out there?
At this point, my understanding, and having coordinated with TxDOT and others too, but in particular the major projects that I know are going on, I don't hear anything right now that needs to be done at this time.
And this kind of, who's suing who over this? I mean, aren't there, is New Mexico suing EPA? Is there some lawsuits being filed as well?
That's my understanding, that there is a lawsuit going on. But with that said, I mean, it doesn't change the fact that we still, at this point, have to demonstrate conformity.
Right, I mean, we have to, you can't depend on that. And so it's in the region's best interest to show conformity.
It'd move aggressively on that.
And do you have not the ozone budget, do you have the dollar budget to do this? Because you said that you had contracted, or you're talking to Texas A&M Research Center. Do you have the resources to get this
I do.
done? Do you need anything else?
No. We have an interagency contract through TxDOT TPMP that allows us to do that work with TTI, and it's at no cost to the MPO.
And do they also know how important this is? Because it gets in the queue there too, right?
Yes, we've had multiple conversations to include TTI, and we're working through all of those questions and have, as a matter of fact, the last round of those questions to submit into the pre-analysis plan and submit it back to the consultative partners. We've expressed to them how important this is to the region multiple times. We are in queue, of course, Dallas, Houston, Beaumont, and now San Antonio to play into that. But I think it's been made very clear to our partners how important this is, and they're moving to
And
help
just
us.
the amount of data, I know that we're in the queue, but does the review of what we're having to answer to amount to the same as Beaumont or San Antonio? In other words, the workload, I mean.
They're all unique, but the good thing about this particular conformity is the review is aimed at just at the conformity document. It's not a plan, and they're not going to come back and look at our model and say, well, your roads and your plan and your modeling are out of sync and all that. This is much more streamlined. So if we don't add anything else and we stay focused on this, it should go pretty smoothly.
Okay. Good luck. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, Roger. So at the last meeting, when we talked about this, there's this, your first bullet is the no emissions budget for those two tests. So the district is still committed. I mean, we're dealing with the general office because I think this should come out of our planning office. But the district's still committed to covering those as soon as you get a dollar amount, if you can work with Jolene or I.
I
we'll do what we
appreciate
can.
that. And I have been talking with Jolene, and I have been talking with TPMP about this, where the interagency contract exists. And the reason I haven't been able to give you a dollar amount yet is because a lot of these things that are going on and determining how much work that TTI actually has to do, that will then determine, well, how much of that is the responsibility of New Mexico.
Okay.
We're getting very close to that. I just haven't been able to get a number for you yet.
I just want the staff and the board to know that, again, in my mind, this is a planning cost, but if push comes to shove. we're prepared.
And I have had that discussion with the TPMP folks and how that may in turn affect the contract. And they do realize that New Mexico is willing to step up to the plate for that.
Yes, as part of the ad hoc committee that looked at this, I would commend Roger. I think he came up with a very good and aggressive plan to address a very serious issue. I would, with that said, I would recommend approval of his strategy and we move forward as fast as possible.
So I have a motion on the floor, and the motion has been seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Do I still have quorum? Item number 9, reports conformity for Destino 2045 MTP, Destino 2019 to 2022 TIP.
Okay.
There we go.
Yep. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Destino 2045 MTP and the Destino 2019 through 22 TIP adopted by the TPB on May the 18th were found to satisfactorily comply with the air quality non-attainment requirements to support a determination of approval of transportation conformity. In other words, we are good to go on the Destino documents. There's no longer a holdup. The conformity grace period imposed on us on June the 6th of 2018 has been lifted, and we're back to business as usual.
Questions?
Super secret probation. We're all.
There you go. All right, Executive Director's report.
Thank you, sir. I have two things on the report today. The first one was presented back at the end of the year last year. You've seen a peek of the multimodal web tool that the MPO is working with UTEP and in developing. This is a UTEP research project, and it was started in September of 2018, and it will go through January of 2020. So there's been some developments. We're in the process of exploring data availability at this point, and we're looking at several corridors to analyze. And probably what we will end up with is the major corridors that we do analyze and the buffers on those corridors will almost bring it to a regional level. We're monitoring the performance of 5 modes of transportation. That would be the driving, the freight, the transit, the walking, and the bicycle elements. And what we're doing is we're looking at how the performance of the corridor is based on all of those modes. So it's a multimodal. It will be a web-based tool. And another thing I would like to say is a very important tool for us because of all the performance measures that we'll be putting into it and analyzing how the corridors perform. We'll be able to come back and use that information. It's a very important part of what we'll be developing as we know from the federal certification review, some of the issues that we have with another performance-driven plan that we have to, or tool that we have to use, and that's a congestion management process. So this is sort of lines up with that. It is its own individual tool, its own individual project. We'll be reaching out to the entities to acquire additional data, and that's going on right now. That'll help us, this ultimately will support the identification of gaps in infrastructure across the transportation modes and provide performance-based information and planning and programming tool to help making decisions. So that will, at some point, come back to the TPAC for more exposure. We're getting it to that point right now where it's getting more data and is starting to become more functional. Okay. The next item, actually, you have in your packet as well, and it's a proposed master schedule. It's not actually a schedule right now. It'll take quite a bit of work to get it to that point where we can plan out for 4 years. So what you see here, and I'm just going to go through a few of the main items. Of course, we'll be able to see how everything that is on this schedule relates to what's going on with the TPB schedule, with the committee schedules. And I'm not just talking about the TPAC, I'm talking about like the CMP, for example. We have a CMP committee. That committee is going to need to be activated again here very soon because of the development of the CMP. And then there's multiple things going on with ad hoc committees, and we do have other committees. So over a period of 4 years, as we implement those committees, we'll see how these items that we're talking about relate to that. So a few things here, FAST Act compliance, we took care of a lot of that today. And the congestion management process, which we've talked about. And it keeps coming up that we need to be able to have a process for ranking our projects. That needs to be included here on the schedule. And then strategic planning, moving into the MTP and the TIP itself. And then funding opportunities, regional air quality conformity, travel demand modeling and updates, public involvement, the development of our unified planning work program, the procurement of agreements. All of these kind of things are major things that the policy board needs to know what's going on. And really what you're seeing here, to include all of these, pretty much all of these elements, are things that you see when we have a federal certification review. So there's things that we need to be doing ahead of the federal certification review, way ahead of the certification review. And so what I'm proposing here is that we have a master schedule that is a 4-year schedule, if you will. And the reason I say that is because of the federal certification review being one of those. But the other thing is the importance of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. And because we're in a non-attainment area, we have to develop a new MTP every 4 years. And that report that I just gave on item 9, that was like the last, that was a seal of approval on the Destino. And that was on November the 6th. So we're just, a couple of weeks or whatever into that. So it's time now to start looking at the development of the new plan. So the reason I'm proposing a 4-year schedule is because there's so many things that happen in that time frame. And I think what this will do is provide guidance to guide us through the transportation planning process. It'll help us deliver planning requirements and documents on time. It'll provide a structure for informed decision-making. It'll help us be prepared for things that come up, because things always come up. For example, when we have an MTP that needs to be amended and you need to figure out how you're going to fit that into your schedule, you really need to be looking at all the other things that are going on. And funding opportunities. So there's so many things, and what I'm talking about here really just ties back to the 3C process. And that's what we're supposed to be doing. It's a continuing, cooperative, and comprehensive process. And I think having a comprehensive master schedule will help us all be able to stay, and on track with what's going on. It'll take some time to develop this. It'll require assistance from all of you. It'll require assistance from our federal partners and MPO staff to keep it updated and maintained. But this will give you, I think, what you need to be able to see everything that's going on, because there's so many things going on. So I hope that in the future we'll be able to bring back and demonstrate a master schedule for you for the next 4 years. And that's my report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Seeing none. Item number 11, Sun Metro Transit Asset Management Plan.
Thank you, Chair. Just real quickly, as the federal government is requiring us, FTA requires us to come up with a transit asset management plan of all our vehicles and all our infrastructure and facilities. We've had this before, but they require format, they require us to put everything under one document, and they make us do certain guidelines that maybe we didn't, that are new, that we have to follow. The next slide. Next slide. Our plan targets, again, we have to look at our buses, our vehicles. Articulated buses and main buses are usually a 12-year bus. We plan on keeping them at least 14 years. That's our goal. We'll probably usually go at least 15, though, probably in reality. The cutaway buses are 7-year buses. We plan on keeping those 10. Trucks, vans, automobiles, support staff vehicles, those are 5-year vehicles, and we plan on keeping those 8 years. Streetcar is a 30-year vehicle. And so that's basically our targets for our rolling stock. Next slide. And this is our targets for our facilities. Pretty much our median, we can do a medium or an average. We chose to do the median. Our median is 4. And basically almost all our facilities are either 4 or 5, which are the top of the scale. We have the depot, the UPTT, which is our oldest facility. That's at a 3, which is the average, I suppose. So we're pretty good in there. And what this all tells us to do is we have our vehicles, we have our facilities, and we have to maintain them. We have to look and see when replacements are coming, make sure we have funding that's available to replace vehicles and do the necessary repairs for facilities to keep them at these levels.
So we have lost quorum, but we can continue with the report as long as there's no dialogue. Is that correct?
Sorry, we lost quorum. The question is, can we continue with the reports?
Yes.
Can't make any decisions or make any proposals.
Or you can ask questions.
You can ask questions.
Yes.
Okay.
Can't deliver.
I'm sorry.
You can't make a motion on whether his presentation was good or bad.
Go ahead.
So it's great, so.
You could lie and say, yeah, it's really good. Well, anyway, so that's the reason why we have to establish our goals for facilities and vehicles. Next slide. And this is the last slide, and this one just gives you an idea of our rolling stock that it gives you our fleet size of our fixed route buses and articulated buses, our rolling stock for the lift or paratransit, and then our non-revenue vehicles. And it kind of shows you that right now for fixed route, we're about 12% above exceeding our useful life of vehicles. Same thing with the rolling stock for non-revenue vehicles. We're a little older on those. We tend to keep those longer. And then as funding is available, we'll replace them through the FTA. And again, the TAM plan is just basically showing FTA that we're managing their assets and how we plan on replacing them, when we plan on replacing them under one cover. And that's all I've got.
Okay. Any questions? So I got quorum back? All right, next report, your FTA 5310, Enhanced Mobility for Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities. Program recipient presentations, Project Amistad.
Good morning. Good morning, members of the Transportation Policy Board. Chairman, Mr. Perea. My name is Rosario Fernandez, Chief Operating Officer for the Transportation Programs at Project Amistad. As a nonprofit, Amistad has been providing social services for over 42 years. Among our programs, we provide services for veterans, guardianship services, and transportation services. Through the Managed Transportation Organization, we serve 23 counties and what is known as Region 2 for the Non-Emergency Medical Transportation Program. I am here today to highlight how Section 5310 enhanced mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities has had a positive impact on the clients we serve. In 2012, Congress authorized the act known as Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century, or MAP 21. Since then, MAP 21 has provided billions of dollars for transportation programs such as Section 5310 to increase mobility of seniors and persons with disabilities. Funds are used for a wide range of projects designed to improve infrastructure, bridges, roads, highways in urban and rural communities, and for programs whose aim is to provide safe, reliable transportation to individuals throughout the United States. Selection of recipient of funds is approved through you, the Transportation Policy Board, and is done through a competitive process. 55% of the funds awarded through 5310 must be used for capital purchases, and the remaining 45% is used for providing transportation services. This slide provides some examples of 5310 projects. This is not an inclusive list. Examples include purchase of vans and buses, wheelchair lifts, ramps, securement systems, transit-related information technology systems, including scheduling, routing, one-call systems, and mobility management programs. Our agency is the lead agency for the Far West Texas El Paso Regional Coordination Committee, also known as WETEP. Planning and coordination is done in our 6-county region, which includes El Paso, Hudspeth, Jeff Davis, Brewster, Culberson, and Presidio counties. Since then, WETEP developed the regional plan approved by TxDOT, and the MPO requests for WETEP to review 5310 proposals and comment as to whether the proposed project is within the scope of the regional plan. The regional plan has 6 goals, and our project is within the scope of the regional plan. Goal 2, as reflected on the screen, to fill unacceptable gaps in service, especially for transit-dependent populations. And how do we accomplish this? The city's mass transit system provides transportation services within their designated boundaries. Communities, colonias, and other rural areas are left without transportation. Through this funding, Amistad provides transportation within the entire county, and we help fill these gaps in service. Goal 6, which is to enhance the mobility of older adults and persons with disabilities, where existing transportation services do not fully meet the need of rural and urban communities. Similar to goal number 2, we provide transportation services to eligible clients, and we remove transportation barriers for those clients who do not have access to public transportation. For fiscal year 16, our agency was awarded $672,250, and this table provides a breakdown of the capital, operations, the local match, and the transportation development credits, and currently this is an active grant. The capital funds allowed us to hire a mobility manager for 3 years. We purchased 4 vehicles that are equipped with camera systems, TV monitors, GPS systems, and we purchased related communication equipment. This slide includes a couple of pictures highlighting the type of vehicles that were purchased through this grant. The operating funds allows us to provide transportation services. It can be a trip to the doctor's office, to dialysis, a cancer treatment center, or any other approved destination. Through September 2018, we have provided 13,241 one-way trips. Per month, we provide an average of 1,666 one-way trips. At this current rate, we anticipate exhausting the funds within a 4 to 5 month period. As you can see from this slide, we took the number of one-way trips performed and aligned them to the corresponding precincts. In Precinct 1, we provided 9.81% of the trips. In Precinct 2, we provided 24.28% of the trips. In Precinct 3, we provided 57% of the trips. And in Precinct 4, we provided 7% of the trips. 1.91% of the trips were performed in New Mexico, primarily the Sunland Park area. Fiscal year 17 funding is ready to be used. We were awarded a total of $549,089. With the funds, we plan to purchase 3 vehicles and refurbish 2 of our existing vehicles. We also anticipate providing 18,925 one-way trips. If we continue transporting the same number of clients per month, these funds will be exhausted in a 12-month period. And so what are some of the benefits of this funding? Through our mobility manager, we provide transportation-related assistance such as navigating and using public transportation systems or scheduling paratransit services. We research local transportation and mobility issues in order to identify areas with service gaps. We forecast future needs and conduct feasibility studies. We coordinate individualized travel training and trip planning activities, and we ensure that elderly and persons with disabilities achieve and maintain their independence. Not only do we increase access to healthcare and socialization, but we improve their quality of life. Now, the MPO has released a request for proposals that is due December 7th of 2018. As a social service agency, we advocate, we connect, and we deliver social services to communities, ensuring a dignified and meaningful life for all. We will be responding to the request for proposals, and we will come back knocking at your door, seeking approval for the continuation of this much-needed service in the community. I am available to answer any questions.
Customer service rate?
We have a customer service.
Yeah, do you track like surveys, customer service?
Yes, through the medical transportation program, we are required to, we actually hired, we entered into an agreement with the University of Texas at El Paso, the Center for Research and Interdisciplinary, and they were the ones that actually perform the surveys for our clients.
Okay, and what is your results?
Overall, we have met, they require a 95% customer satisfaction, and for the past year, we have met the requirements of the contract every quarter. So we have.
And so these are scheduled appointments?
That is correct. Yes.
And so do you have rates as in late or missed?
Yes, internally we track key performance indicators, and our average right now for on-time service delivery averages between 96 and 97%.
Okay. And what is that just for late, but what about missed? Or is that
For
both?
we do not have any missed appointments. What we do have, and it's a challenge for, I assume, for any transit provider, is no-shows. When we go out to the client's to pick them up, sometimes the client either cancels at the doors, or they decide not to go to the appointment, or we can't find them. So we track those as no-shows.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed your budget is quite reduced from 16 to 17, like a couple of $100,000. How can you continue to operate and provide all these services?
Our budget from last year, or from fiscal
Yeah.
year 16?
You showed 672,000 in 16, and you show only 549 in 17.
Right.
Then the local match is another $100,000 less.
So the way that we provide the services is based on the funding that is available, and that's how we determine how many number of trips we're able to provide throughout the course of the cycle. It is a grant. It is a grant for 3 years. We have procedures in place to cap the number of trips per month so that we can extend the life of the contract.
So basically, you wind up with people not getting a ride when they need it.
We also use other resources that we have internally, for example, as the non-emergency medical transportation. If the client is Medicaid eligible, we refer them, and that we require that they use the medical transportation program to transport them from point A to point B, as opposed to using these funds, Section 5310 funds, to transport them to their medical appointments. We, when there is availability, we refer them to the El Paso County Rural Transit. We also refer clients to the Sun Mitchell Lift. So we try to use our resources to defer clients to other resources so that these funds are maximized.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Rosario?
Yes, sir.
What is your total budget? Total budget for all your services?
For our agency, for this past fiscal year, was approximately $17 million. For $17 million for the whole agency.
Any other questions? Thank you very very much.
Thank you.
And we have a City of Socorro.
Excuse me, Christina Stokes with El Paso MPO, and I failed to jump ahead of Rosario's presentation, but I wanted to let the board know that the reason why we've invited these agencies to come is to be able to present to you what we've been doing with the 5310 funds. Because the MPO is a direct recipient of those funds, we have calls for projects for subrecipients. And the progress and the services they've provided is what we're trying to relay to you as how it's being effectively used in our communities. So we've invited them to present and let you know exactly how they're using those funds and what good use it's coming to within here. Okay.
We have City of Socorro.
Good morning. So my name is Eunice Marquez, and I'm a recreational leader with the City of Socorro. I'm mainly with the Rio Vista Community Center, and I do take, I'm the one in charge of the 5310 program transportation department. So I take care of all the logs where we pick up our seniors. We're mostly focused on our senior citizens that need a way to get to their doctor's appointments, that need a way to get to the groceries, sometimes as simple as that. But we also have a housing program on site at Rio Vista Community Center that is just for our senior citizens. So we are working off a basis of just, they call us, we pick them up. So we're always on demand for their needs. And I would just like to thank, of course, how Ms. Rosario Fernandez for her detailed overview of the 5310 grant. And as you will see on our presentation, our services are not only growing because we meet the goals and objectives in closing the gap between the utilization of public transportation and their quality of life, but we also utilize a lot of social media, city apps, and quality control interviews with riders or participants to track and document their quality of service. We do not have missed rides as we are on-demand on-call services. All of our services are free of charge due to the internal resources and mechanisms within the city to operate and maintain this service. With our budget, it is $493,100. And I do want to specify, when our senior citizens call us up in the morning saying that they need a ride to get over to our services, we have that personal relationship where I can tell by the call who you are, if you have a mobility issue, which transportation I should take to go pick you up. And thanks to us being so small, we can actually have that one-on-one relationship, whereas if there would be a problem, they could come up to us right then and there and we can fix it for them. So with them, with our senior citizens, we, how I mentioned, do have free transportation to take them to many places. Not only do we take them for medical services, but we also take them to civic engagements. Like in June, we took them to downtown to the expo, a health fair, which was very informative. They all really enjoyed it. And thanks to the vehicles, we were able to take all our seniors that day, and they all took advantage of everything that was offered that day. We take them also to quality of life events. We also take them to different community centers so they can interact socially, so they won't just be shy and just timid and be on their own. We want them to keep being socialized. And like I mentioned, we do have our senior nutritional program at Rio Vista Community Center. And we also use the ADA vehicles with the emergency response. Now, last year we did have a lot of flooding in our area. And thanks to the vehicles, we had this lady that without the AD vehicle, I don't know how we would have gotten her out of her house. I was personally there that night when we took them we sheltered them at Rio Vista Community Center, and she was not able to get into any other vehicle but an ADA vehicle. So thanks to that ADA vehicle, she's here right now, like, honestly. The city, of course, also, we are a demand on call and response service. I'm glad to say that if you call us in within about 5-10 minutes, we'll be at your house. We don't take a couple of hours to get there, so we do schedule our calls accordingly. So this community center of ours, we are open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, which gives us enough time to take them to any kind of medical appointment, groceries, or anywhere they need to be. And on Fridays, we do work on Fridays, we do work from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Our two ADA vehicles, when we have a 10 passenger, with a two wheelchair, and the other one is a 4-passenger with a 2 wheelchair accessibility. These are our numbers compared from 2017 to 2018. As you can tell, with the total numbers for 2018 annual report, we've had a significantly increased our trips, mostly because we do want to focus them on the availability that it's there for them. We want them to reach out to us. They know that sometimes they just can't make it with their medical transportation. We're there to help them. And I also want to mention Mr. Reta was not able to be here today, but he does send his regards. He's in a conference out of town. And if you guys have any questions or concerns, you guys can always email him to the email that's provided. We also have a video just so you guys can see some of more of our projects we have with our community.
Close your eyes. See with mine.
And that's the expo in downtown.
Is there supposed to be music?
Yes, but that's fine. The majority of our seniors do use walkers, which take up a lot of space, but thanks to the 53 grant, we were able to house a couple of those in each vehicle. When we take them out to eat, and of course, to our Chihuahuas games, very popular. We have a couple of dances for them, keep them moving. We take them out to picnics, to the parks. That would be the expo downtown.
Is there any limit as to where you can take it, boundary-wise?
No, no. No, I've taken them from Fabens all the way to downtown. Wherever they need me to take them. And when we do have our outings, or we like to enforce the hashtag mobility for all, not just our senior citizens, but anybody that is in need of the vehicle as well. And then on the coming up slides, you will see the devastation from our Coca residents. That's when we get the sandbags ready for them. If our senior citizens are in need of sandbags, I do drive them to the recycling center. I pack up a couple of sandbags for them, and I do deliver them to their house. Right there, we're working with Socorro High School with the cosmetology program, and they provide services for our seniors free of charge. And that is the residents that we assisted, and that was all underwater. So that was the house of the lady that I was mentioning earlier. So thanks to the rapid response, we were able to get there on time for that family. So now since then, we do ask whoever's close by to that area, if we know that there's flooding coming, we do call them in advance. We tell them what's going on. If they want to, we can go ahead and pick them up and shelter them until the storm is over. And those are the health fairs we have for them. All the information that sometimes they just do not know about. We also go to trainings to UTEP with TechStot, which are very informative and help us grow as a community. And of course, we like to hashtag mobility for all. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. Notice your monthly trips are always high in March.
In March, we have a lot of health fair events for the sun, sometimes they don't have ACs. So we like to keep them in places that are very fresh. So we do our research and try to see where we can take them all in the spring and summer.
How much funding do you get out of the 5310 for your program?
And I have Miss Alejandra here with me to answer those questions. One second.
I know that your budget's 493,000. I'm just.
Yes, good morning. We are very fortunate that the City of Socorro does offer the majority of our funding. They pay for our personnel, for our maintenance costs, for our fuel. Last year, we were awarded about $83,000, just about, and we have so far only asked for capital projects for the acquisition of vehicles.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. South Central Regional Transit District.
Good morning. I'm David Armijo, the Executive Director for South Central Regional Transit. My presentation is going to be a little bit different. Our approach on the 5310 grant that we came forward to you some 2 odd years ago as a brand new transit system that we're only a few months into our being. So we had a slightly different approach. Let's see if I did it the wrong way. Did I go one way or the other? Yeah, there we go. I got it wrong twice then. All right, so first let me just give a little background. So this is a 3-county map. Our service area for SCRTD, we're one of 4 districts in New Mexico, is about 11,800 square miles. We started with service primarily in Doña Ana County and one particular contract route that actually goes into Otero County through, and I'll show a map of that in a moment, vis-a-vis what we call our orange line into Alamogordo and so on. And then we're now in the process of going to northern Doña Ana County after almost 2 years and going up to Hatch and then connecting into Sierra County. This is our service map. Hopefully you can see a little bit better in your program. We primarily have 4 bus routes. For the particular project I'm going to talk about, we were focused on the southern part of the county, specifically the purple route that you'll see on that map, which is our purple route, which connects into our hub, which is Anthony. So from Anthony, you can get to Chaparral, into El Paso via North Gate Center, or you can get purple, come down into Sunland Park Casino, and then go across to the west side, and there you connect to 17 routes, which gets you in and out of anywhere you want to go in El Paso. We also connect in the southern part on this purple route services from the gold route that comes in from Las Cruces to El Paso, and also connectivity to the El Paso County's Route 10, and connection in Sunland Park to the Route 83. So you have a real good opportunity. Now, this was looked at from our standpoint as how can we serve seniors and people with disabilities in a service area. Quite frankly, there was no service. Much of the area, like Santa Teresa, there was nothing there before. So anything we did was going to be beneficial. But we also were starting out with service that was 3 times a day. We had service from 7 in the morning till 9, and then 11 to 1, and then 4 to 6. This gave us an opportunity to add more service and to treat the service on the purple line and this is an example of one of our service buses in Sunland Park. Well, let me move forward. So these are some of the riders that we've had and some of our goals. And I believe the program started with an opportunity to acquire a small bus, which I'll show you that in a moment. We have about $109,000 in the program. It also allowed us to have a couple of staffing people to cover these trips. The key to this was a flexible service. So we were running a regular route and deviating. We were so successful in carrying people to different locations, and since we were still starting out, we extended the deviation to our turquoise route into Chaparral, which had very low ridership as well. And I'm going to show you the growth impact of that. And here's an example of the bus we have. Now, that bus is still providing services. We went through this over a 2-year period, spread out the funding for that over the 2 fiscal years, and we're able to get pretty good ridership from it. Here is the graph. So when we started, we were carrying about 100 plus people a month. By a couple months ago, we were hitting over 800. This route actually last month carried over 750. So if you program that out, we're carrying about 6,000 or more people a year. I think we looked at the numbers of being about 35% being either seniors, disabled, or whatnot. So we're carrying a couple thousand people a year in the project year. And again, those are people in a service area that had no service. So anything we did had to be successful. We feel that this is a really good resource, and we appreciate the 5310 because, again, from our status point, we use this as a pilot. So after the first year, funding then was covered through our 5311 rural funding and continues to go forward with local funding coming from our member cities, including Sunland Park, Anthony, and so on. So the service is doing very well. We had 5 buses when we rolled out the service 2.5 years ago. We picked up this bus. We've picked up other buses. We're now at 10 buses with an order that we just got for a bus going up to Sierra County. We may be looking at some other opportunities with the new legislative session, we hope. Maybe we can pick up another vehicle as we go forward. So the system is growing. It's doing very well. You see very dramatic growth. We're now up to 5 trips a day, so the service is every 2 hours. We hope to eventually start doing late night service or even start to look at Saturday service. So that's really where there's a lot of interest in that. We appreciate the 5310 program. Again, we use this as a one-time and how we could leverage those funds to grow the system, and we continue to use that vehicle. We may come back at some future time to do something else, and maybe in Chaparral, wherever, but we have that vehicle to work with, and we really appreciate it. We believe this is a very good program for us. A little bit of resources makes a big difference. That's one of the examples of our maps. Also, if you go to scrtd.org, we are on Google Maps. So any scheduled trip you have anywhere in Doñana County, Google it in, you make your connection. If you do this particular route, it will tell you at Sunland Park that you can get the 83, you can get the Route 10, you can also get all the Sun Metro routes. So it really works very well for us. And you get a good sense of the trips that we have. I should have done before and after. Would have showed you how much smaller the trip was. But the service is doing very, very well. We anticipate dramatic growth in the future. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have, but we really appreciate this program. It made a big difference in the communities of, certainly the communities of Sunland Park, Santa Teresa, and Anthony.
Any questions along the board? Yes, Mr. Rooney.
Oh, it's not going to be bad. Oh, Mike Rooney, I want to thank both of you on the presentations. You put out the numbers and then the trend line. Usually I have to use the Texas Open Records Act to get that. So some of the smallest organizations just give it to you. And, you know, really helps managers make decisions. So thank both of you for going to the trouble and being that open and transparent with your communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Sumo? Thank you, David.
Thank you very much.
And Viva Transportation.
Yeah. But he needs to practice his New Mexico open records request.
Morning, everybody. My name is Roberto Wallace. I'm the operations manager for Viva Transportation. I can use a clicker here, right? Cool. We started in 2008. I don't know if you've seen our buses around. We are a non-emergency medical transportation company. We are a private public transportation company. And for almost 12 years, we've have great success helping Medicare Advantage clients, Air Agency on Aging, and the El Paso community. We've been part of the El Paso community now. On transportation, I mean, the El Paso County has a huge need, thanks to the 5310 grant that we received last year, subrecipient with Proyecto Amistad. We help fill in that gap on Goal 2, that is where the need is in the rural areas of the county. Of course, transportation is really expensive. There's a huge need in El Paso, and we're trying to help fill that gap. The city of El Paso for paratransit, they only have a Sun Metro lift. They do a great job. Proyecto Amistad, they do an outstanding job, just not in El Paso, but the other 6 counties, and us helping out in the community as well. We, as a different type of facility, we get referrals from a lot of other transportation and facilities around the city and the county. So Proyecto Amistad, Sun Metro Lift, 211, the Air Agency on Aging, clinics, fairs and conferences, advertising, word of mouth, which is our main source of a lead. Why is that? Because we take clients to their medical appointments, and while they wait hours to get treated by our doctors, they talk to each other. How did you get here? Proyecto Amistad, Sun Metro, a taxi cab, or Viva Transportation brought me in. So we kind of measure our incoming calls throughout the years. This year we measure about 495 calls. These are just calls that are looking for transportation. These are not customers that we already have. These are customers that are looking for transportation. So approximately, we've been serving about 80 plus customers for the past 2 years. These calls, we either refer them to whoever we serve or to whoever our contracts are. So about 80% of our ridership is Medicare Advantage. That's wrong, 90%. So about 20% is from the Area Agency on Aging, and it's a scattered percentage from other places, like we serve DARS, which is now the Texas Workforce Commission. We serve DADS, the APS, a couple of senior homes that don't have wheelchair accessible vehicles. We do a couple of ambulances service that do not provide non-emergency transportation. Of course, we do foster homes, hospitals, clinics, doctors, and we also serve a different kind of need, which is a private need for sons, nephews, daughters, parents, whoever they live out of town, that they don't have the way of helping their relatives in town, so we help them as well. Our service expands again. We serve. We've been serving the Veterans Home at the Kenworthy for about 4 years. Now they have their own vehicle. The other agencies like the Area Agency on Aging, DARS, DADS, APS, we've been serving them continuously. There's a lot of need in Medicare and Medicaid, low income. That's what Project Amistad serves a lot of the Medicaid, serves all the Medicaid transportation. And we like to work in together with the Project Amistad and the LIFT. Our service area expands throughout the county. From Countillo, Benton Anthony to Tornillo and Favens. We do go inside Fort Bliss. We're a approved facility to go inside Fort Bliss to take veterans to either Beaumont or the clinics inside the actual base. And we serve Chaparral and Sunland Park as well. In our map, it's not there, but we do. We like to think that we're a secure transportation service. We are not a taxi cab company. As you may know, we do the same service and the same training as Project Amistad and Sun Metro Lift. So we do have CDL drivers. There are past trained drivers. They have past experience. We do hire from Sun Metro and Project Amistad fire drivers, so we give them another chance. We do a lot of wheelchair training. We do a drug and alcohol awareness training, defensive driving, CPR, service animal training, which is now required with some of our contracts, and of course fraud, waste, and abuse. We are reliable. Our average pickup to an appointment is 30 minutes. 30 minutes to an hour before the appointment. We are on time on that. We don't miss trips like Sun Metro and Project Amistad. We don't miss trips. We don't miss trips. Just like, I'm sorry, Jay. The microphone is wrong. We don't miss trips, just like Sun Metro and Project Amistad. Sorry, guys. They're looking at me too. We do not miss trips. No, it's the same way as Rosario from Project Amistad mentioned. We do measure the no-shows, and I don't want to go to my appointment cancellation at door trips. Our pickup back home is about a 45-minute average right now, and our on-time performance, we do measure everything in, so we're at 93%. We do not miss trips, just like them. Our status right now, this is where we come to the MPO, and we came last year. We are at 110% capacity right now with our vehicles. We are hitting a lot of overtime. Our vehicles are doing double shifts, which is not the best way to treat our vehicles. We do measure our life, our vehicles like Sun Metro, but we do want to take them to more than 10. We want to take them to 12 years to 13-year life cycles, which we have. Our oldest vehicle right now is 2008, so that vehicle already hit its 10-year mark. We want to keep it for 2 more years. We get a lot of referrals daily, like I mentioned. We try to disperse them around, like send them to where we know where the need is for them. But there's a big thing in El Paso right now. The wheelchair capacity has increased for us at 22%, and dialysis trips have increased for us at 12%. There are dialysis trips popping up everywhere. TxDOT mentioned a lot of improvement on the west side of El Paso. There's 3 more clinics on the west side of El Paso, brand new ones. One of them is only serving 1 customer right now, but the need of dialysis trips in El Paso is growing every year. So when we started with 3 non-wheelchair vehicles and 1 wheelchair vehicle. Now we have more wheelchair vehicles than non-wheelchair vehicles. That's how bad the demand has been. in El Paso. Our projection is to expand our service. We have expanded our service with the 5310 grant throughout the El Paso County. That way we can fill those gaps that are needed. We do a lot of awareness when we get calls, when customers ask, what is there else for me? Sun Metro, Proyecto Amistad. There's a lot of other agencies that do provide transportation, so we don't overlap the services that we do. We expanded, and we want to expand our current hours, operation, and administration. We start at 3 a.m., and we finish at about 6 to 7 p.m. That's operational, Monday through Friday. We want to expand that to 2 a.m. to 8 p.m. And again, it falls back to the dialysis and wheelchair needs. We acquired a vehicle with 5310, which is exactly the same one that Proyecto Amistad, I hit the wrong one, acquired. And we train drivers in awareness and train more drivers in the 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. pickups. El Paso, this is a really quick chart. It's an old chart, but it tells you that we are over the need of transportation in El Paso. All of us are over capacity. If you approve funds for Proyecto Amistad, they need them. We're all over capacity. We want to do the best service. Mr. Gomez mentioned that how do you survive with those caps? They have to cap it every single month. So we're all there in that, and we want to focus on the county. Thanks for the MPO. I mean, we grew. We had one more job to provide. The vehicle that we acquired produced 2 more driver positions. We gave more rides out. We expanded our hours. If it wasn't for the MPO, we like to call it our non-survival mode, because it's an expensive entity to carry on. It is really hard to pay or buy or expand our services without the vehicles. And of course, running vehicles on double shifts, it produced a lot of problems with the vehicles. This is what the free chart that we produced. With this vehicle, over the year, because we were going to have the vehicle for a little bit over a year, we produced over 1,800 trips. 40% of those trips are disabled, and 60% of those trips were senior citizens. The combination of two, they go overlap. I mean, some of them are disabled senior or senior disabled. The odometer on our vehicle, we started at 1,150 miles in July. It's at 55,900 miles right now, and only 283 days of use. So we do put the miles on the vehicles. We lose the factory warranty like in the first 3 months. So this is a little bit of super quick. I'm sorry?
3 months? Or?
We lose the factory warranty on the vehicles in the first 3 months.
No, but you had mileage.
Yes, I'm just telling you that we have a mileage for a year. So when we started was at 150 miles. Now we have over 50,000 miles on the odometer on that vehicle. So the factory warranty ends in 30,000. So that's just an example when we lose the factory warranty.
Should that be 2017, 18 then? September?
Oh, you're exactly right. Thank you. That's September 2018. Thank you. I did that, so if you pay attention. So the usage of our usage on our vehicles, I mean, you see that the growth has been exponentially every month. We've put about 3,000 to 4,000 miles a month on the vehicle, and that's about a 10% increase on our fleet. Again, with the ridership, our ridership was about 200 more rides a month for that vehicle. Those are our hours of operation right now. We want to expand those. Thanks to the 5310, we expanded to those hours right now. And there's my contact information if you need anything. If you need the corrected presentation, I'll send it to you. And we are hopefully applying for the 53 next fiscal year just for capital. We at the WETEP, we work together, and we want to say we work great together. And we're only applying for capital funding. We want to leave all the operational funding to Proyecto Amistad because they're the ones that take most of the clients in El Paso County. So we're allocating just to capital in the next couple of years. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for paying attention. Questions?
Any questions? Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
The next TPB meeting is going to be on December 14th at 9 a.m. Everyone have a very happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy it with your families. Thank you. I don't have a quorum, is that right? Oh, we do?
Oh, then we have to stay till there is one. Yeah, stay till they come back.
There's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? It has been seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Objections? Motion carries.